If you were trapped in a flooded basement filled with man-eating alligators, what would you do? A Category 5 hurricane is destroying everything in its path, but before this girl and her father can escape, they'll need to outsmart the swarms of 500-pound prehistoric death machines that have taken over the neighborhood. And somehow it's going to be even more dangerous than it sounds. We're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to survive Steve Irwin's basement in Crawl. This girl is about to have the worst family reunion that you could possibly imagine. Haley here is a competitive swimmer at the University of Florida, and she's getting psyched up for another morning practice. It's time for her race, and the girls take off through the water like rockets, but she just barely loses to her teammate in the next lane. Although she congratulates the other girl, the loss hits her pretty hard, reminding her of times when she was younger and training with her now distant father. She doesn't realize it yet, but soon she's going to be in a contest for her life. In the locker room after practice, Haley gets a FaceTime from her older sister, Beth, who lives in Boston. She's checking in because a Cat 5 hurricane is quickly approaching their area, and for some reason she hasn't been able to get in contact with their dad. The neighborhood where he lives is under a mandatory evacuation order, but she's worried that he might be trying to ride it out, and asks Haley to let her know if she hears anything from him. Instead of taking her sister's advice to stay safe, Haley decides that she's going to look for their dad herself, with no idea that she's walking straight into a death trap from her worst nightmares. Okay, this girl is making a huge mistake. Her older sister and the local government are all trying to warn her to get somewhere safe, but instead, she's about to dive right into the heart of this massive storm. Going after a loved one is just about the only reason why anyone should even consider something so risky. And even then, it's much better to let the emergency responders handle things until the danger passes. Because, well, in a matter of minutes, this rescue mission could turn into a fight for your very survival. To really appreciate what the danger is here, first we need to understand what she's getting herself into. Now, I actually didn't know this until I started doing some research, but the scientific name for this kind of storm is called a tropical cyclone. We call them by different names like hurricane, typhoon, or tropical storm depending on the strength of the storm and where it's located. When one forms over the Atlantic Ocean, like here on the east coast of Florida, we call it a hurricane. The most important ingredient for a hurricane to form is warm ocean air, which is why here in the United States they always occur during the warmer months from early June until the end of November. It starts when warm air from the ocean's surface rises up into the lower atmosphere, called the troposphere, and creates an area of low air pressure underneath. More air rushes in to fill the gap, which then warms up and rises again, creating a swirling chain reaction that causes the storm to grow more and more powerful. But it doesn't stop there. Under the right conditions, these storms can continue to grow into some of the most terrifying weather events on the planet. We use a system of measurement called the Saffir-Simpson scale to rate hurricanes based on their maximum sustained wind speed, ranging from the least intense Category 1 storms all the way up to a Category 5, which is what Haley here is about to find herself in the middle of. Category 5 storms like this one are incredibly devastating, with wind speeds reaching more than 157 miles per hour, and storm surges causing coastal waters to rise by over 19 feet. That's about as high as a 2-story house. These storms are considered to be catastrophic in terms of their damage at landfall, and can easily wipe entire neighborhoods off the map in the blink of an eye. In fact, when a powerful hurricane hit the city of Galveston, Texas back in the year 1900, somewhere between 8,000 to 12,000 people ended up losing their lives, making it the single deadliest natural disaster in United States history. That's terrifying to think about, but Haley here should already be very familiar with the dangers that this kind of storm can present, as her home state of Florida is where more than 40% of US hurricanes make landfall. So if you're looking for a reason not to live there, I'd say that's a pretty good one. By ignoring the evacuation orders to go looking for her dad, she's going to be exposing herself to flash floods that can wash entire houses away, and winds capable of ripping trees straight out of the ground and flinging them through the air like missiles. She'll need to find a way to get around these floodwaters and avoid getting her head taken off by flying debris. which is more or less going to come down to dumb luck. If you ever find yourself in the danger zone of a hurricane, don't be like Haley here. Follow evacuation orders immediately if that's what you're told to do. Otherwise, take shelter in the sturdiest part of your house away from windows or glass doors, and hang on tight until the storm passes and emergency responders are able to get to you. Trying to save her dad is brave, but it's also a great way to get herself killed. And it won't be long before Haley realizes that the storm isn't the only force of nature that she needs to be worried about. After a while, she comes to an intersection where traffic is backed up due to an overturned car, and one of the officers who's on the scene just so happens to be her sister's ex-boyfriend, Wayne. Haley tries to explain her situation, but can't persuade him to let her go any further. He says that it's his job to keep her safe above all else, but promises to go check on her dad himself if he gets the chance. Not satisfied with waiting, she quickly decides to send it down a dirt path to get around the roadblock, and the officers are too busy with the others to stop her in time. She makes it to her father's condo in one piece, but finds the place completely empty. To her, all signs point to him having gone to their old family house. And after a quick call with her sister, she decides that it's the next best place to check. With her dad's dog Sugar riding shotgun, Haley drives back over to the old neighborhood. There in the driveway of her old house, she spots her father's work truck. He must be inside, so Haley texts her sister with an update, and the two of them go to check it out. Inside the house, she tries calling out for her dad once again, but there's still no sign of him anywhere. Haley decides to call his phone, and this time she hears it ring, finding it tucked under a washcloth near the kitchen sink. Listening closely, she's able to hear something strange. It's rock music coming from somewhere down below. Just then, Sugar starts barking from another part of the house, and as Haley goes to see what's up, a massive tree branch comes crashing straight through the window, scaring the crap out of her. Clearly, the storm is still picking up, but the danger is only just getting started. Haley follows Sugar out to the garage, where she finds the dog staring down into a crawl space below the house. After calling down and getting no response, she turns on the light from her phone to go investigate for herself. But that was her biggest mistake. Okay, Haley here is braver than I am, because there's no chance in hell that I'd be going down there without making some serious preparations first. I get that she's short on time and wants to save her dad, but you don't need to know that you're in a horror movie to see the danger here staring at you straight in the face. Between his work truck outside and the sounds of a radio coming from down below, all signs point to her dad being down there, but he's also unresponsive and hasn't answered a single one of their calls for several hours now, which can only mean that something terrible must have happened to him. Even if he just hit his head and knocked himself out, she's probably still going to need help, so before going down there, I'd start by checking in with her older sister one more time. I'd want to let her know what was going on and tell her to send help if she didn't hear back from me in the next 10 minutes. That way, if I also ended up in trouble, then there would at least be backup on the way. With the way that things are looking outside, going down below ground level is just asking for trouble. She could easily wind up trapped by the storm, and if nobody else knows that she's down there, then it's gonna be game over. Plus, the inclement weather isn't the only thing that she should be afraid of. Anyone who's familiar with what goes down in Florida knows that vacation destinations like Miami Beach and Disney World are only half of the story. The rest of the place is pretty much Skull Island. We're talking about several species of venomous snakes, deadly insects, invasive Burmese pythons that can grow over 18 feet long, and of course, the state's unofficial mascot, the American alligator, which we'll get back to soon enough. With all that being said, you wouldn't catch me setting one toe in that basement with anything less than a military-issued flamethrower. Alright, so maybe that's a bit unrealistic, but all jokes aside, if I were Haley here, I'd definitely let her sister know what was going on, and at least take a quick check around the garage for something like a hatchet, machete, or even a kayak paddle that I could use to defend myself in a pinch, just to be on the safe side. It's always better to be safe than sorry, after all. a lesson that Haley is about to learn the hard way. She begins cautiously searching for her dad down in the basement, following the music until she finally discovers the source of the noise. A portable radio that's still turned on. He has to be down here somewhere, and as she turns around, notices a pair of bloody handprints on the pipes overhead, as if he'd been attacked by something. That's when she finally spots him lying motionless just a few yards away in another area of the basement, and rushes over to see if she can help. When she finally gets to him, her father is completely unconscious, but she can still feel him breathing and discovers that he still has a pulse. Looking him over, she notices a massive wound on his shoulder and realizes that she has to get him to a hospital right away or else he's done for. But just when she thinks that they're home free, their uninvited guest makes its first appearance, demolishing the entire staircase as it charges towards them. It's a giant American alligator, and if they don't move fast, it's going to eat them both alive. Okay, did somebody say crikey? Just when it looks like things couldn't get any worse, here comes this big green bastard to crash the party. But that's just Florida for you, I guess. American alligators like this one here are a large species of crocodilian reptile found only in the warm habitats of the southeastern United States, ranging inland and along the coast from southern Texas all the way up to North Carolina. They're considered apex predators, capable of making a meal out of just about anything that crosses their path. Although their diet consists of mostly smaller animals, in some cases, human beings have found themselves on the menu, and an encounter with one can easily turn fatal, even if it isn't planning to eat you. That's because these prehistoric behemoths can reach lengths of nearly 20 feet when fully grown and weigh in at just under 2,000 pounds. So although the dinosaurs may have gone extinct, we've still got these guys running around to remind us just how terrifying that nature can really get. Speaking of terrifying, the jaws of an American alligator come equipped with up to 80 menacing teeth, specifically designed to latch onto their prey and never let go. Adults can clamp down on their victims with nearly 3,000 pounds of force, giving them possibly the strongest bite force in the entire animal kingdom. But these powerful jaws are also their weakness. While you definitely do not want to get caught by a bite on the way down, when it comes to opening their jaws, their muscles are actually extremely weak, and the average person can easily hold their mouth shut by hand or with some tape, if you're brave enough to get close in the first place, that is. How you're going to get safely away is another question entirely, but hey, it's a start. This means that if Haley and her dad work together here, then they could be able to use something like some of the exposed cable that are hanging down there, or even his tool belt to tie the gator's jaws shut, effectively eliminating the threat. The hard part is going to be finding the right opportunity, but if you take advantage of the gator's natural behaviors, there are actually a few different ways they could approach this. Being cold-blooded animals with extremely slow metabolisms, gators can go for long periods without eating, but also need to rest often to conserve their energy, which means that they spend up to 17 hours a day sleeping. They hunt most actively during the night, and since it's still the early afternoon, Haley should have a chance to catch this one by surprise. That's going to be easier said than done though, because as part of their specialized survival adaptations, they've developed extremely acute senses of sight, smell, hearing, and touch, allowing them to detect both prey and potential threats with ease. One possibility could be to throw something in the opposite direction as a distraction, and then carefully sneak up on it from behind, since the only place that alligators can't see is directly behind them. In reality, alligators are ambush predators, which means that they prefer to let prey come to them rather than actively give chase. If this were the case, then the simplest solution would be to just stay out of the way and wait for the right opportunity to get to an exit. But this gator here seems more than happy to chase them down, which is bad news for Haley and her dad. While they may not look like Olympic sprinters, gators are also extremely fast on land, capable of reaching speeds up to 35 miles per hour in short bursts. The good news is that their stubby legs and stocky build don't exactly make these speeds easy to sustain, causing them to quickly tire out. Although it would definitely be a risky approach, it could be possible for Haley to lure the gator into a chase while using the layout of the pipes and support beams in the basement to avoid letting it get too close. Once the gator is good and tired, that should make it much easier to get the upper hand, and either disable it by tying its jaws shut or avoid it altogether while she looks for another way out. If the worst case scenario should happen and Haley was to get grabbed, she'll want to take the same approach as a black bear and fight back with all of her strength. There's pretty much no way that you're going to beat a heavily armored murder lizard in a fair fight to the death, but you don't actually have to win the fight to survive. You just need to convince the gator that you're more trouble than you're worth to get it to leave you alone. Experts say that focusing on weak points like the gator's snout and eyes should do the trick. But even if you're successful in fighting it off, you're still going to suffer some pretty severe battle wounds in the process. Overall, things aren't looking too good for Haley and her dad here. But if they can avoid getting caught in those jaws and using the gator's own natural weaknesses against it, then they just might be able to make it out of this basement alive. Terrified, Haley starts pulling her father away in the opposite direction as fast as she can. But the beast is slowly closing in. Just when it's about to snap them up, she manages to duck back into the area where she found her dad in the first place, and the gator is forced to turn back, unable to get under the space between the pipes. They're safe, at least for now, but things are only going to get worse the longer that they stay down there, and they need to find a way out fast. For a while, Haley only sits there contemplating where it all went wrong as the storm continues to grow outside, and the gator silently watches them from the opposite end of the basement. Just then, her dad suddenly starts to regain consciousness. As soon as he realizes where they are, he tries to warn Haley about the gator, but he's not telling her anything that she doesn't already know. Worried, he tries encouraging her to get out of there and take care of herself, but she refuses to leave him behind. While they're talking, Haley notices that he's also wounded on his leg, with the bone poking straight through the skin, and he explains that it happened as the gator was trying to drag him away. They're safe as long as they remain on this side of the pipes, but both of them know that they can't stay down there forever. That's when Haley's phone starts to ring, but she dropped it during the chase. Still, she decides to go for it despite the obvious dangers, and the fact that even if they can call for help, it's unlikely that anyone will be able to come for them because of the storm. Realizing that he can't stop her, Dave shows her the safest way to go, and reminds her to keep a close eye on the gator since it can still see her even in the dark. After a tense crawl through the mud, Haley finally makes it to her phone, and luckily, it still works. She's about to call the police, but stops at the last second to make sure that the noise isn't attracting attention from the gator. Peeking around the corner, it looks like the coast is clear. But just as the phone starts to ring, she hears a reptilian growl from the shadows behind her, and a flash of lightning reveals a second gator only a few feet away. Panicking, Haley crawls for the safety of the pipes, but just when she's about to make it, the gator grabs her by the leg and drags her away. She manages to kick herself free, but her only escape route leads them right into the path of the other gator, leaving her with nowhere to run. Thinking quickly, she uses one of the animal traps to fend off the first gator, and jams another over the second one's head. The first gator quickly circles around and cuts off her path, forcing her to take another route, and crushing her phone as it slowly lumbers after her. In the chaos, she's able to grab a nearby screwdriver and jams it straight into the gator's eye, giving herself a chance to slip into a small area where the animal cannot reach. Now that she's safe for the moment, Haley pulls out her flashlight to take a look at her leg, and what she sees is not good. She's been badly wounded from the attack, so she uses a piece of cloth to tie off the blood flow, crying from the intense pain. Meanwhile, her dad manages to crawl over to his tool belt where he finds an incredibly bright flashlight, as well as a heavy-duty shovel. The storm is only getting worse as the basement begins to fill with water, and an emergency broadcast comes over the radio announcing that anyone still left in town should immediately get to higher ground. But it's already a bit too late for that. Okay, this is getting out of hand. Now there are two of them. One gator was already bad enough, but now that it's got a friend, that gives them double the reasons to get the hell out of this basement as soon as physically possible. And to make matters even worse, if the man-eating reptiles don't get them, it's only a matter of time before Mother Nature herself does. The gators might seem like the most pressing issue right now, but there's another element working against them that they have absolutely no control over. And that's the risk of flash flooding due to the rapidly rising water levels of the storm. Now, if you're a strong swimmer like Haley here, then you might be thinking that you'd rather take your chances with a little water than a 15-foot reptilian death machine. But the truth is that flash floods are really no joke. In fact, they're actually the most dangerous weather-related hazard of all, resulting in far more deaths every year than hurricanes, tornadoes, lightning strikes, and yes, even alligator attacks. During a flash flood, water levels in low-lying areas can rise as much as several feet in just a matter of a few minutes. So if you're trapped in a basement with no way out when floodwaters are hitting your neighborhood, well, I don't think that I really even need to explain why that's a very unlucky position to be in. With the way that things are going, they've probably got less than a few hours before this entire basement fills up with water. They need to get out of there now, and the good news is that they just might have a way to do it. Consider this, if they were trapped down there with nothing but their bare hands, then they'd be in a lot of trouble. But Dad here finding his tool belt and that shovel just completely changed the game. With the gators blocking their path, they may not be able to get to the exit, but that doesn't mean that they can't try making one of their own. Here's the plan. First, Haley needs to regroup with her dad. It's common knowledge that there's safety in numbers, and while I'm not about to suggest that she uses her own old man here as a meat shield, I will say that sticking together here would force the gator to break up its attention between the two targets, making it easier for both of them to escape if it decides to attack again. Also, they'll be able to keep an eye on each other and keep each other alive if one of them should pass out from their wounds. Getting back over there is going to be dangerous, but Dad can use his flashlight to figure out where the gators are hiding. And as long as Haley moves with caution, she should be alright. On her way over, she should also try to get her hands on that radio. That way, they can use it to listen in for weather updates as the storm progresses, or possibly even use it as a distraction in a pinch. Next, we're going to use those tools that he found to go straight up. When Haley was being attacked by that second gator, we could clearly see the sun shining through the floor right above her, showing that there's only a relatively thin layer of wood between them and the first floor of the house. Using the shovel and any of the other tools that are useful, they can remain in that safe area of the basement and break a hole straight through the floor above them, allowing them to climb right out of this death trap. I'd bet that they'd be able to muster up the strength to get it done. Haley and her father start working together to figure out where the gators are, guessing that they're still somewhere near the basement stairs. Seeing this as an opportunity, Haley decides that she's going to crawl for the front of the house to try calling someone for help. As luck would have it, there actually are people nearby. A group of local delinquents who are taking advantage of the storm to steal an ATM machine from the gas station across the street. As they're loading the machine into their boat, one of them actually notices Haley signaling with her flashlight from the basement. He decides to do the right thing and try to help, but what they don't know yet is that they aren't alone. While he's distracted, a massive gator lunges onto the boat, grabbing his girlfriend by the leg. At the same time, Haley sets off her car alarm, confirming to the man that she's really trapped. But when he turns around, he sees his girlfriend being turned into a go-to meal, only to suddenly be dragged under by another gator himself. Somehow, he actually manages to escape and races back towards the gas station to warn his younger brother. But just before he can get there, the gator returns to finish the job. The kid can only watch from inside as his brother is torn limb from limb, and quickly realizes that he's going to be next. Terrified, he retreats back down one of the aisles. But when he looks up at a mirror on the ceiling, he sees another gator closing in from behind. Before he can even react, the gators drag him underwater, tearing him to shreds in the blink of an eye. While Haley's still processing what she's just seen, her dad yells that there's another access hatch near the kitchen. She'll have to make a dangerous trip to get there, but with time quickly running out, it might be their only option. Luckily, Haley makes it to the hatch without running into any trouble, and seals off the area using one of the animal traps, but she's not out of the danger zone yet. As she pushes the hatch, she knocks loose a nest of spiders that start crawling all over her face, sending her into a total panic. Disgusted, Haley flails around, trying to get them off of her, but makes a ton of noise in the process, which could definitely attract unwanted attention. After getting rid of the bugs, she's finally able to push up to the hatch, but there's a piece of furniture stacked on top of it, leaving them with no way to get through. Frustrated, she tells her dad the bad news, and they decide that they need to come up with a new plan. Okay, their original plan may not have worked out, but they're making a big mistake by giving up so easily. Even with the furniture blocking their way, that hatch is still probably their best possible escape route, so I wouldn't want to quit on it until we've tried everything that we could. First though, let's give Haley some credit. She had a great idea by using that animal cage to section off her area of the basement, making it temporarily safe from the gators. If it were me, I'd consider taking this strategy one step further and try using more of the traps to box the gators in while they're not as active, creating a safe route through the basement from the area where her dad is to the area under the hatch. This would allow them to work in peace without the constant threat of getting chomped, and then they could focus on getting out of there instead of avoiding more encounters with the gators. Now, she may not have been able to lift the hatch with her own strength because of the furniture that's on top of it, but there's still one more thing that I would want to try. It could be possible to lift up the hatch, just enough to push the blade or handle of that shovel through, and then use the tool as leverage to lift the hatch. With enough persistence, she might be able to use this additional strength to shake the furniture free and lift the hatch enough for them to get out that way. Of course, there are no guarantees that this would work, but I'd at least want to give it a try before completely giving up on that plan altogether, especially when their options are already so limited to begin with. For a moment, it's starting to look like all hope is lost, but just then, they hear the unmistakable sound of a motor coming down the street. It's Wayne and one of his partners in their police boat, and when he notices Haley's car parked outside, he decides to pull over and check things out. After getting no response when he knocks on the front door, Wayne lets himself inside and immediately begins searching through the house. Down in the basement, Haley and her father are shouting and bashing on the pipes, trying to make as much noise as possible so that Wayne will be able to find them. Following the sounds, he eventually makes it to the cellar door, where he spots Haley through the open hatch. She shouts back at him not to get any closer, warning him about the gators, but he's about to meet them for himself. Meanwhile, back outside, the boat propeller gets tangled in some vegetation, leaving the other officer with no way to control the raft. He's forced to disembark to get it clear again, but while he's in the water, he notices something tugging on the family's swing set. The officer foolishly goes to investigate, but no sooner does he realize his mistake than a whole swarm of alligators surround him and tear him to shreds, ripping his head and limbs clean off of his body. Back in the house, things don't go much better for Wayne here. As he's trying to warn the other officer, he's suddenly grabbed by a gator that lunges up through the hatch, dragging him down into the basement below. Terrified, Haley rushes over to help, but another gator surfaces and grabs Wayne by the head, crushing his skull as it drags him away. This leaves Haley no choice but to swim for her life back towards her dad. As she does, the splashing alerts another gator that begins chasing after her, and she only narrowly manages to outswim it, making it to safety just in time. At this point, Haley has nearly given up all hope, but after another father-daughter pep talk, she's able to find the courage to try again. Here's the plan. Dad here is going to create a distraction by banging on the pipes, which should give Haley a chance to swim for the stairs. With their strategy laid out, her dad gets himself into position, and Haley promises to come back for him before setting off. Dad here immediately starts banging on some unexposed pipes with a brick, creating enough noise to draw several of the gators in. One of them races towards him down an exposed pathway, but at the last moment, he kicks out a construction support, burying the creature underneath the collapsed floor beams. With the creature trapped, he starts going to town on its head with a brick, before finally grabbing his shovel and burying it into the back of the gator's skull. Somehow, he's actually managed to kill one of these monstrosities, but they still have a long way to go. Meanwhile, Haley begins carefully making her way towards the exit. For a moment, everything seems to be going according to plan, but while she's trying to keep her eyes on one of the gators, she accidentally backs right into a metal trap that's hidden under the water, and the noise gets the gator's attention, forcing her to hide. Now Haley realizes that she has no choice but to try going through the overflow drain pipe, an option that they've been avoiding so far because it's the route that the gators used to get inside, making it extremely dangerous. Her dad tries to stop her, but she ignores his warnings and presses on, straight into the heart of the gator's territory. The path is full of muck and dead animals, and she bumps into Wayne's body bobbing on the surface of the murky water. Horrified, she climbs up onto a small patch of dry land, only to realize that she's just broken an egg. That's when she discovers that this isn't just a path for gators to get in and out of the basement. It's a whole ass nest, which can only mean that there are more of them close by. Okay, it looks like now we know what's really going on here. These gators may seem terrifying, but the truth is that this whole thing could just be a big misunderstanding. And unfortunately, there's only one person to blame. To be fair, there's really no way that he could have seen all of this coming. But it's also true that none of them would even be in this position if it weren't for Haley's dear old dad here. I hate to say it, Dave, but you f***ed up, man. You f***ed up. Up until this point, it has not been clear why these gators were so damn aggressive besides just chalking it up to horror movie logic. But now, we have a little bit more of an explanation. We know that in the real world, gator attacks on humans are extremely rare. They don't see us as prey and will usually only get aggressive if provoked, or if a mother gator feels that her nest is being threatened. Since Haley and her family haven't lived in this house for quite a while, there's a good chance that the gators moved in without ever expecting any people to come by. The gators probably see this as their house now. And when Dave suddenly showed up to start doing some construction, it activated their natural territorial instincts, which would help explain their uncharacteristically aggressive behavior. Like I said before, it's not like Dave knew that he'd be leading several people, including his own daughter, into a death trap, but the fact remains that none of them would have ever even set foot in this place if it wasn't for him getting in his feelings and making a solo trip back to the old house. Basically, all of this bloodshed is essentially the result of this one guy's midlife crisis. He may not have been directly responsible for what happened, but if it weren't for him being there, Wayne and his partner would definitely still be alive, and now there's no guarantee that even his own daughter is going to be safe. Word of advice: next time you're doing some basement repairs, start by making sure that a family of death lizards hasn't moved in first. It's not all your fault, but you're not winning any Father of the Year awards either, I'm afraid, because Dave, you f***ed up. Seeing Wayne's body, Haley is suddenly struck with a great idea. After carefully checking the area for any gators lying in ambush, she reaches over and grabs Wayne's Glock from his belt. Finally, she's able to even the odds a little, and not a moment too soon either, because just then, one of the gators bursts from the water and takes her whole arm in its mouth, weapon and all. Screaming in pain, she empties the clip from inside of the gator's body, and actually manages to kill it. But it sinks down to the bottom, taking the weapon with it, and now her arm is badly injured as well. Still, a win is a win, and she starts crawling through the pipes like she's escaping from Shawshank Prison, determined not to give up now that she's so close to freedom. Finally, Haley makes it to the canal, but she isn't safe just yet. As she's swimming along, trying to stay as close to the bottom as possible, her bubbles end up alerting a sleeping gator, and just like that, the chase is on. Haley swims for her life, making it to shore just in time. But down in the basement, the water is still rising, and her dad will be dead in just a matter of minutes. Grabbing a chair from the back patio, she bashes through the glass door into the kitchen and sees her dog scraping at the floor where her dad is quickly drowning directly below. Thinking quickly, she picks up a crowbar from his toolbox and starts bashing her way through the floorboards, making a hole that's just big enough to pull her dad through. By the time that she gets him up, he's already stopped breathing, so she starts desperately performing CPR, doing anything she can to bring him back to life. Just when it looks like he's done for, she pounds on his chest with both fists, and he suddenly jolts awake. They need to get to safety, but when they look outside, they realize that their cars are both completely underwater, which means that they won't be driving out anytime soon. Instead, her dad suggests that they should go for the looter's boat at the gas station across the street, but the path to it is absolutely crawling with gators. Haley isn't very confident in this plan, but he reassures her that since gators hunt primarily by sensing disturbances in the water, they should be fine to move under the cover of the storm, as long as they don't make too much of a commotion. Okay, really? Just walk slowly is the best plan that they could come up with? I don't think so. I mean, their options are limited, sure, but after making it this far, I sure as hell wouldn't be just serving myself up to the gators on a silver platter like they're about to. They may not have much to work with, but let's see if we can't come up with a better approach. This should be pretty obvious to anyone with 2 spare brain cells to rub together. But walking out into that water is just asking for trouble. Not only are there gators, but they could easily be dragged away by a sudden strong current, and any downed power lines will make for deadly electrical hazards as well. If they're really determined to get across the street to that boat, they need to come up with a way to do it more safely. Now, I don't know if it's the stress getting to them or what, but they're completely forgetting about the big-ass kayak that's hanging right up there in the garage. Hopping aboard that thing would make travel much safer. And if for some reason that wasn't an option, they could even try creating a makeshift raft out of one of the several doors or some other furniture in the house. It doesn't have to be perfect, just enough to keep them out of the water until they can get to that boat. Personally though, I wouldn't even bother trying something so risky because on her way into the house, Haley actually saw 2 rescue helicopters fly by while she was in the backyard. There's a good chance that these choppers will pass by again. So if it were me, I'd play it safe and just go straight up to the house's roof instead. That way, they wouldn't have to worry about any gators. They could just sit back and relax while they patiently wait for rescue to arrive. No sooner do they all get on the boat than they see a massive wave bearing down on them. There isn't enough time to get away, and the floodwaters immediately take the whole boat for a ride, sending them crashing straight back through the front window of the same damn house that they just made it out of. The surge flips the boat, sending Haley, her dad, and their dog to different parts of the house, and filling the entire place with waist-deep water. Haley manages to climb up onto the kitchen counter and starts slowly making her way towards the other side of the room, with her dad shouting for her to meet him at the stairs. Meanwhile, her dad happens to find this urn floating by the stairs, but instead of someone's ashes being inside, it's actually full of emergency flares. Go figure. At the stairs, her dad finds their dog swimming for its life, but just as he pulls her to safety, the gators return, with one of them grabbing him by his arm and dragging him down beneath the surface. He's fighting for his life, but the gator spirals into a death roll and ends up tearing his entire arm off below the elbow. Haley shows up just at that moment, and now the gator decides to go after her. With nowhere else to go, she takes cover in the shower, and luckily, the glass door is strong enough to keep the gator out, which gives Haley here an idea. Opening the door, she cleverly lures the gator to her, before quickly climbing out over the glass and slamming the door shut behind her, temporarily trapping the gator inside. They're about to regroup and start climbing up into the attic, but just as she's about to follow her dad, Haley notices a helicopter searchlight shining in through the second floor window. Lighting a flare, she rushes over to get the chopper's attention, but ends up getting the attention of a gator instead. The beast comes crashing straight through her bedroom window, leaving Haley trapped with no way to get back to the rest of the house. As she looks around trying to predict where the next attack will be coming from. The gator lunges up from behind and grabs her by the shoulder, dragging her down and launching straight into a death roll. Things are not looking good for Haley here, but at the last moment, she's able to grab the waterproof flare and jam it straight into the gator's eye, setting herself free. Her escape is only temporary though, because as she swims for the safety of the roof, the gator circles back for another try, and this time, she's completely exposed. Her only hope is to use the house's gutter to hold it off, and luckily, a rogue electrical pole knocks the gator away, saving her just in time. With his one good arm, her father pulls Haley up onto the roof, and they collapse next to each other from exhaustion, relieved just to still be alive. Off in the distance, they see the rescue helicopter making another pass, and Haley lights the last of the flares, finally managing to get their attention. Despite all odds, the two of them have actually managed to survive, and now they've learned the most important lesson of all. Move the hell out of Florida while you still have the chance.
But what would you guys do? I know what I would do. If I'm in the basement of a house during a storm and I see an alligator, I'm taking my chances with the storm. But let us know down in the comments if any light bulbs are going off for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'll see you guys in the next video, and have a damn good day.